All right, it's Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, it's really 8 p.m. Daylight Savings Time, but I'm going to have this protest for at least a few weeks because I'm really exhausted.
Another 6 months.
Yeah, no, it's like 8 months they put it apart. It's not until
8 months.
November we're going
Sun
to.
doesn't lit up. He never lit.
It's 5 p.m. on the West Coast, and we are live. Welcome, adventurers. I'm your guide, Sean McZoo, and this is the Reptile Show Reporter. As usual, Bill Strand, the head of the Chameleon Academy, is my co-host. Tonight, hopefully, we have Jon Hill from iPardalis. I'm going to have to call him Jonathan if he doesn't show up very soon. Talking about Chameleon Genetics, which is our topic for today, and he's the expert. Anyways, let's go ahead and start the video, and we'll go from there. All right, that's done. Let's get that out of the way. Got a couple announcements myself. The first one is we'll check the chat in just a second. I guess, Bill, you have any announcements that you want to talk about?
I don't. I don't. Just normal. I'm there 5 a.m. in the morning. And although I'm going to be taking this weekend off from the vlogs because I'm going to be getting ready for Yvette's birthday.
Wow, I'm going to be at Tinley, so hopefully it won't be interrupting me this time because you had me get on the show in the middle of Tinley.
Not this time. I'm saving up my credits for there's a time in the future where I'm going to do that to you.
Okay, that's I guess good.
I'm saving up goodwill now.
All right. So no other announcements?
No other announcements.
Okay. So I'm going to start a new guideline. If you're not in the chat by the end of the announcements, I will not be showing pictures because it does get a little interruptive to have the picture up. But we'll do that in a sec. We'll show everybody's pictures. I'm going to find a new place for the dogs, at least for part of the shows, because I was listening to some of the old shows and it got annoying to me to listen to the dogs. And I know my dogs probably know me more than anyone else because they're trying to annoy me. But I'm going to try to do that. Jenna's actually walking them currently. We're going to put them we'll let them out at some point, but we'll put them in the somewhere else. So here's Jon Hill. All right. So I'll put him on in a second. As soon as he gets live, he's not, I see his situation, but he's not actually in the picture. So, all right. Podcast 18 is live featuring Brandy from the Saline Reptile Show. It's all about shows and how to do them and what she did. And she's a youngin' and just got a really good show. So take a look, take a listen, and learn something. It's on all the Spotify and all the podcast places and YouTube as well. And what else? So we're going to be talking about Chameleon Genetics today, but I'm going to go back to the chat, and we'll start talking about showing different people's pictures, and then we'll bring Jon on. All right, so let's see. Two Turtle Tom was first here, so let's go ahead and put his picture up. There's Johnny's. I can actually see him now. So let's hope he's got everything off. Let's see. True Turtle Tom. Here he is with his daughter right there. And who was next in the chat? It was Chris Green was next in the chat by my memory. And then we'll get you in a sec here. Jon, I'll put you up. Well, I'll put you up anyways here. Welcome, Jon. Can you hear us?
What's up, guys? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yep. Okay, we're just going to go through a few more of these people who showed up early. And then we're going to not do this anymore during the regular show because it gets interruptive and what have you. So James Cross, the Fog Father.
What's up, James?
Or Mr. Flex Seal. I think that should be his new nickname, Flex Seal God or something like that. If you've seen any of the DIY Chameleon guys, you know what I'm talking about. And let's see who's next. Stephanie Payne is next. Let's see, Steph, where are you at here? I don't seem to have you. So there you are. Thought I put them in alphabetical order. There she is. And the next person here, let's see, James Cross, Eliza Ann. This will get we're gonna have to say the first five. I don't know what we're gonna have to do, but Eliza Ann alone because she's without Bill here. Although Bill's right there in this off the screen.
Did you crop him out?
Yeah, I cropped him out for sure. Actually, here, This is the actual picture.
Oh, okay, nice.
So it's too much
See
building.
what I got to put up with, John.
We went, we
Yeah.
decided to go in another direction.
Such gratitude, yeah.
I was watching something else the other night. Let's see, Elijah and CNC tortoises. We don't actually have their picture, so we can't put them on. But then now we're done, so that'll be it. With all the pictures, Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I'm calling you Jonathan because you're late.
I know I'm in trouble. I have 2 young daughters, and we were at dinner, and just getting them to finish up and get out on time is why we were late. So I apologize for that.
That's okay. I guess blame the kids. I guess that's you.
I wish they were. I had a better excuse.
I have 5, so I understand. I guess that's why you go that direction, anyway. So okay,
yeah. But
go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jon Hill, the owner of iPardalis, and I wrote an article about the Ambanja locale. I think that's one of the topics we want to talk about today.
Absolutely,
as well as genetics in general.
Go ahead and put that article here. I got if you don't mind me showing your website here and your blog. Cool. Okay, let's see if I can do it. All right. Let's see if I got
Jonathan's not he keeps his website secret.
Yes. Yes. All right. So there's the articles.
Please don't view it.
All right. So there's a bunch of different ones called Ambanja when you Google them, and you go through and discuss. And we're not going to let everybody or make everybody read all this stuff. You discuss what is really an Ambanja. What do they look like in Madagascar? Which I have 2 of these guys. I'll show them later. I have 2. Yeah. I had 3. I actually have pictures of 3 that were actually from Ambanja and really look like this. And and you go on to talk about
it. Picture from the Chameleon Information Network from 1999.
Yeah. There you see a map of Mbantu, which is near Ambanja, and that'll be more important when we talk about it later. And there's another
examples of those animals.
One more pictures. And Ankafai, which these are all cities or areas.
And part of the reason I pulled those Google Maps images, actually interactive maps right there into the post was because often the conversation doesn't include terrain map so that people can understand what the terrain looks like and what we're actually talking about.
So I'll leave this for now, and we'll go back and talk about Blurple and what have you as time goes.
That's the later topic. But basically, like part of what I wanted to communicate was that the captive bred Ambanja that we have in the United States look different from the ones in Madagascar.
All right.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. And thank you, Mikey. There's a lot of reasons for that. Part of that is selective breeding. Part of that is the fact that they've been traditionally mislabeled. So the Ankafi and Mbato have been labeled Ambanja by many importers over a very long period of time. And so even the common perception of people who have been breeding Ambanja in captivity for many years are not in practice in noticing the difference between an Ankafi and an Ambanja or an Mbato and an Ambanja. They have all been kind of melted into one concept. Given that they've been labeled that way, right? And that's fair. I think that's it is what it is. But part of what I wanted to point out with the article was just that it was a mistake to label them all one thing. They are actually distinct populations that don't breed in the wild. They have a look that differs from each other, and I found that, like, when I was talking to people trying to get started with Ambanja locale animals, they didn't understand the history. They didn't understand this story. And so sometimes I would bring it up, and old time breeders who would be like, oh, it's boring. Like, we've heard this before. I was like, yeah, but not the new people. The new people haven't heard this yet. And so that's that was at least part of my intention of putting it down on paper, is just so that people could see the whole story, say, hey, why do the animals we have right now look different from the ones in Madagascar? And there's a bunch of reasons for that. And so I tried to touch on most of them. Obviously, in the beginning, the import process is messy. That's the first point. Traditional mislabeling, and then selective breeding, and then into the Blurple story. But yeah, I don't know if you guys had. I know both of you have bred Ambanja. I haven't bred Ambanja, but I just was trying to put it down in a way that people could kind of understand the whole locale and the controversy that they might encounter if they're trying to breed it. So,
just a kind of a side thing. At one point, there was something going around the community that Ambanjas were hard to breed and reproduce and get healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was, I mean, I didn't have a problem. I didn't see any difference. Where did that come from? What was surrounding that?
I mean, that's a really good question. I don't think anybody has an answer to that.
Was it a real thing?
I know people had challenges with them. Yeah. And I know that there were a lot of stories about how Ambanja are special and different from all the other locales. And my theory from very early on was that was the effect of what happens when you cross 3 locales, like right out the gates. And so it's like, because I've heard similar stories of when you cross animals that are genetically dissimilar, right? And so if you take an animal from the East Coast and you pair it to an animal from the West Coast, eventually you start to have some of the similar types of stories cropping up in those projects. And so I've always assumed that was part of the story. I don't think anybody has a real answer to it, but yeah, those are part. There's definitely rumors related to it, and I think part of the reason that some people have it, some people don't, is because some people have more pure Ambanja and some people have less pure Ambanja, and so then those stories crop up in places where they're potentially crossing things that are not supposed to be crossed, right? So,
okay.
But yeah, because there's nothing like geographically speaking or habitat wise that would explain that, right? Because you could see it if the region itself was fundamentally different from the neighboring regions. Like say it was really high elevation, or it was something fundamentally different about that locale, then there would be some kind of explanation for it. But I don't see that. I don't see a geographical hint.
Okay.
Right. I mean, you guys have probably thought about this too. Do you have any theories about where some of those stories came from?
I don't know. I hear those, I like to track down stories and figure out where they originate, because there's always a kernel of truth, and it's fascinating to figure out what is that kernel of truth. And then say, okay, how can this be reinterpreted with what we know now? And it brings in some insight to rumors that were strange, but now we know something.
Correct. Yeah, there's always a reason, right?
Yeah. I haven't been able to track down the Ambanja one. So that's why I was asking, seeing if you knew where that came from and what the situation was.
It's tough. I think the selective breeding as well, you can breed a little bit too much of the same to the same for too long, and you can get similar types of effects, right? So there might be a little bit of that in there.
Like, for example, right now I'm trying to figure out all the people who say that fogging kills chameleons, kills ball pythons. What were they doing that they came up with that? Because obviously something had to die somewhere along the way. But nowadays, I mean, we've got James, me, Sean, all sorts of people fogging all the time. Nothing's dying. So something happened. Somebody did something, I want to figure out what it is so we can make sure that nobody repeats that. We got a good thing going here. I'd rather not I don't want to find out what
Yeah, I
went
got
wrong.
7 or 8 different
Okay.
species that I'm fogging with one fogger. So,
Oh yeah,
so
all different chameleon species or different?
yeah, different. Yeah, and well, you know, the tortoises are getting some of the fog. My
Oh, cool.
red-footed tortoise, the one that I had originally and just kept myself and grew from a little one, not adopted or rescued from the rescue. That one doesn't have any pyramiding, and it's been in fog for a long time, for many
Cool.
years. So, but I have multiple different foggers. I have one main fogger and a couple side foggers, all kinds
Yeah,
of different things, and nothing ever happens to that.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard you talk about the tortoise fogging. That's really cool.
Yes,
I
I mean
know-
it's not really directly tortoise fogging, but they're in the basement
Yeah.
with the chameleons,
With the fogs
probably
and
right below the
yeah,
chameleons, and secondary fog, I guess. But
yeah. I mean, I told you guys that I started misting my black rats. So I have black rats that I caught. They're local. You know, the one I found under my recycling bin when I moved into the house, and now he's a good like 6-foot snake. But I've started misting him, and his primary source of hydration is I'll mist the leaves in his enclosure, and he has his huge pothos vine on one side, and he drinks the water off the leaves. That's how he gets his water, and it's a lot of fun to watch him do it. It's very active drinking versus the constant dish strategy that I've used in the past. So it's fun.
yeah. So I've also fogged. I've not only fogged tortoises. I've fogged frilled dragon. I fogged whatever those flying dragons were that we had before that Bill had on show. Yeah, Dracos. I flogged that guy. I had him for a long time, but he passed. I fogged almost every species I have, except for
cool.
I don't fog my bearded dragons because I put a little fog in the.
Well, maybe maybe that's a good hint as to what is going on. Is you clearly are good at applying that method, and probably somebody who tried it was not as good, right? Like I find. So the first mister I set up is terrible, right? But now I've done it so many times, I'm pretty good at it, and I think I'm much better at placement, much better at maintenance. Like I can tell if there's a clogged nozzle somewhere that I need to replace or how to clear it. I have a better understanding of the cadence of refilling, like all the details of just like making it work from a practical standpoint that you get good at. As you apply the method more than once. Maybe that's part of the story too, is like somebody just tried, they ran into that first bump that resulted in a failure and just quit, right?
I'm sure that's what it was. I just would very much like, because Chameleon Academy, I like to say, guys, this is how you start out. And so I'd love to know what those initial
what are those hurdles are. Yeah, like what's the hurdle? Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody out there has ever had a problem with fogging and you can determine just explain
like
the
what
situation
went wrong,
so we can figure out what the dead ends are, and because they're out there somewhere, somebody's run into them and just decided that the fogging's at fault, not
the first time I fogged
not the broken nozzle. Yeah.
But I fogged a panther in a glass container that was normally it was the right style of stuff. It was one of the Zoom Eds or whatever, but I fogged a panther and misted it and dripped it, and it got it suffered before I figured out it was too much, just way too much fog for this thing. And I had to cut it down but then it went pretty good. So that's the only thing you could over fog, I think. But you can over mist, you can over drip, you can, I guess you could over drip. You can put a hole in them. You know?
And it's my job to figure out how to describe that in words and video, and
to make sure people don't do it. Yeah. And just bioactive is another one where it's pretty easy for people to mess it up, right? Yeah. Especially they haven't done it before. They can waterlog it. They can, there's a bunch of easy mistakes there too that I think that people might run into the first one and just run. Like I can't do this, or it's not working.
Just a note to our commenters: make sure that when you're on Facebook, you let us know who you are, because every time there's more Facebook users than or the Facebook users from the Chameleon Academy. But we can't tell who you are until after the show, and then we go back and say hi to you. But it's a little late. But at this point, we're not going to be saying showing pictures of anybody. We can actually say hi to a few people, but we're not. I'm not going to do pictures after I do the intro and all the other announcements, because it gets too much breaking up. But who else is here? So
let's see. We've got Andrew Roach talking about genes.
Yes.
And,
cool.
Howard Redder on there.
Okay. Welcome, guys.
Booked.
All right. So we were supposed to be talking about Panther Chameleon Genetics, but we got off into
there.
But you know, that's the way this show normally goes. We start at one topic and end up in a whole nother planet. But you know, that's the right stuff. So okay. So you were talking about the Ambanjas, and I have never had a problem breeding Ambanjas, but I've only bred 3. There were 3 wild-caught males and 3 females that I got from Bill. So it doesn't really help that Bill doesn't have any trouble if I got my females from Bill. So, but I had no problem getting them to breed. I've got little babies that I can show.
Cool.
They, they proved out to be at least Ambanja from what I see. I mean, we could show. Let's just go to those.
Yeah, and your wild-caughts look like classic Ambanja. They don't look.
That's Bagheera. He passed without actually. He was
breeding.
A wild caught that didn't. His eggs weren't that he was supposed to have had bred with weren't fertile, and he did pass. So I don't have any babies of him.
But look at that snout. I mean,
yeah.
And look at that's another one of Bagheera. That's just a different picture of him. This is the 3rd picture that I have of him. He was outdoors, as you can see the sunlight in the back. But it was terrible.
His rostral appendages, it's just like classic.
Right. So I was trying everything to get him to survive and breed, and his eggs, I kept them forever. Him and I forgot who I bred him with, but I kept the eggs forever. They molded over. They were but some of them, I had eggs that molded and actually hatched at one point. So I was like, I'm just going to keep them till they're gone, and they disappeared. So, but this is the one that I actually have some babies with. This is This is Bungie. This is my I guess favorite one. I don't know why, because he seems to be, but he's really friendly now. He comes
like rock solid.
He eats out of a cup. Even when I'm just feeding, I'm trying to put stuff in his feeder cup, and I got a big main cup. He tries to eat out of that, and since he's a import, I have to actually throw away all the rest of those crickets, or get rid of them, or keep them for him, and toss the cup. But I realized that after a couple times that I'm gonna have to protect the cup. And
I have 2 wildcaughts that do something similar. They're very eager eaters, and they figure out very quickly where their bread is buttered, and they come right after that cup. It's funny, and like they learn that very fast.
There's the final picture of him. There's some of the Bungie versus Pink. That's best picture of that's the best picture of the one I have. That's Bungie versus Pink. This is the same chameleon. It's in a different state of
excitement,
I guess you'd call it. There's Mowgli. He's my 3rd import. Not showing a lot of colors, but but actually I think he shows a little more color there. But he's the 3rd one. And then here's Pink. I don't know why I didn't put out the girls, but that's the one that's had the most babies. But that's nice. And actually, Bill, that was the one that you sent me 4. One of them was a different line. That was the different line one. So anyways, that's
cool.
So I think those are classic, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, they're good
ones
examples.
That you got from me are the captive generation bloodlines. So they're the ones that are
fun.
Maybe not classic. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's all good. I think I started with that article simply because I knew it was a little bit controversial. It'd get people's attention. Sure. And then the next article, I want to get into Ambalobe and poke fun at my own lines. and I'm serious. Like, I don't think many people are honest with like what their questions are, where they're like, I don't know about that. And I think that's the next thing that I want to do is basically take it. It's like, okay, yeah, we had a little bit of fun with Ambanja. Now let's get into Ambelobe, which is the classic trash heap of a locale of like, we don't know, we call it Ambelobe, like it's been for years. Like people have no clue what it is. So we'll slap Ambelobe on it. Right. So it's even worse than Ambanja, where you've got the 3 locales being combined into one. With Ambelobe, it sits right in the middle of everything regionally. And if anything's iffy, they'll just throw that label on it. Right. And so the challenge of breeding Ambelobe is even more difficult, in my opinion, than breeding a pure Ambanja, given that there are so many crosses. It's primarily crosses. It is at least my interpretation of that, is that because of the way that people have labeled Ambelobe as like the trash heap locale, it makes it that much more difficult to get good Ambelobe genes going because of that. And so, like, I know some of the Blurple, especially Blurple breeders, got mad about that article, but what they didn't, I tried to explain to them is like, I'm skeptical of all of this. Like, I'm not skeptical of just Ambanja. I'm skeptical of Ambelobe too. Extremely skeptical of it. And that's I don't know. Some people took it the wrong way, I think, but that's the way that I see it. So,
but you were looking to stir up a little controversy because people pay attention.
Yeah, of course. Because then people engage, and then you get a little conversation going, and that's
about it. And so,
yeah,
so that's good.
Just want attention.
Right.
I know it's all about me, right, Bill?
It's all about wanting attention.
But
we know,
but
we know you to be attention hound there, John. So
No. But like, part of what I also experienced, I know you guys have probably had the same thing, is you talk to people who are trying to do an honest job. Like they really want to do a good job with breeding a pure Ambanja line. And then a lot of this information comes later, right? They breed their first clutch, and then they don't know any of this history to make an educated decision on. And then later they get attacked, or they're like, somebody comes and starts like trash talking them from the side about something that never occurred to them. And so and I knew that there's a lot of drama related to this. So I was like, let's put it out there. Let's get, at least maybe somebody could read this before they start to breed Ambanja. So at least they're prepared. They know that.
I think that's a huge value in that, because no matter what we decide, the ethics or good, bad, or how we're going to judge the situation, if somebody looks and says, boy, I love the Ambanja colors, how do I get and they're looking at a classic Ambanja, getting something that is labeled Ambanja is not going to give them those colors. It's going to be some wild, it may be a beautiful chameleon, but it's not going to be the classic.
It's not.
And I remember this when I was looking for my Ambanjas. I wanted a classic coloration, and I was thinking, gosh, we have all these different colors that are called Ambanja, but where's the classic? How do I get the classic? And there wasn't one available. So, at the very least, let's go ahead and split it off and say, okay, these are the classic wild types. I like that. That works. And this is the laboratory.
The true blue Ambanja.
The true, no, that's Nosy Bay. And that's different because there were blues in the wild.
I know, I'm messing with you. It was a comment. It was a comment that somebody made, and that's why I had to say it.
That's why Bill went to Shamrock chameleons, because there aren't many colors of those, and they all look about the same. So
Nate asked a really good question about which ones are pure, like which ones are more commonly pure. And I think the easy answer, the reality is, it's the ones that are hard to mess up, right? Like a Nosy Mizio. if it's pure, it's pretty hard to mess, like to think it's something else. A Ankarami would be a similar type of situation. Like people aren't going to cross those. For the most part, it can happen. Like if a
They're
mislabeled
not going to
female,
want to. You'll just
they're not
ruin the
going
one
to
thing
want
good
to,
about 'em.
Yeah,
right? So
get
some
an
of the more
unproven female,
extremes,
though.
right?
You know, the thing with panthers is you can get an unproven female and you don't know where it's from. So you
Yeah.
can be told it's from anywhere, but
Oh yeah. So probably some of the ones that are more distinct are the ones where it's less common to see crossing going on. But the ones like Ambalobe, which are right in the middle of everything, like Ambalobe Sambava, Ambalobe Andapa, and Ambalobe Ambanja, like good luck, right? Some of those combinations are really difficult to spot. So once it happens, even with like say you've got a wild caught female, and the wild caught the male that looks exactly like that locale, and that wild caught female you pair to the male, the offspring are going to look Ambalobe, like from a phenotypic standpoint. You're even a 50-50 cross, like you're probably, unless you've looked at thousands of chameleons and you're kind of OCD about it, like you're not going to notice the crosses and you're just going to continue with it. So that's what makes Ambalobe extremely difficult. I think with Ambanja, to your point, Bill, the ones that are suspected as crosses don't look like Ambanja. So honestly, it's something we should have seen early on, or at least said, "Hey, this is different," and been like, "We're going to breed this to itself instead of crossing every new Ambanja line into it over and over, because it clearly is not the same. It doesn't look the same." And I know at least the way that I've bred panthers from the beginning is I've assumed that if they look that different, they're different. Like that's a very simple rule, but it's like if they look that different, they probably are not close to each other in the wild, because we know what happens when you breed them together. It's like throwing a bunch of colors of paint together. They mix, and then they don't unmix. They stay mixed, and so I very early on was like, if they were breeding in the wild, then those colors would not be so distinct, and therefore I'll keep those separate. Like that was a very simple rule that I applied, even though the lineage people would say, oh, they're both the same locale. I'm like, yeah, but I don't trust it, and that at least is a rule of thumb that I've used from the very beginning. And I think that type of rule of thumb would help in the Ambanja world, given that you look at something, you're like, yeah, that looks really different. Maybe I shouldn't put those things together, because they are different. And but that's very subjective, right? But I think that it's at least one rule of thumb that might help in some cases, because of the way that we know that the way that their genetics mix, and it's not like once you put the two things together, you're going to get back to the extreme anytime soon. That you just end up with a mix.
Now, Eliza Ann had a really good question at 525 or 825.
Cool.
Are wild caught rostral horns bigger than captive bred? And this,
a good question.
I think, is a can of worms.
I mean, that's a really difficult thing to generalize about. We know that certain local forms like Ambanja are known for that downturned, elongated rostral appendage. But like if you go, different locales have different shaped rostral. Generally do, not all of them, but generally there are some patterns related to their facial structure, their body structure and size and things like that, that essentially there's like a phenotypic range that's normal for a given location. So for Ambanja, that range is that range involves longer noses, and more downturned rostral appendages. And if you go on the East Coast, you kind of get some more square or like blocky type shapes. And in Ambalobe, you can be somewhere kind of in the middle, right? But it's hard to generalize about that because that's not something that is usually seen as a part of a phenotype in a given local form, outside of Ambanja and a few others, where very early on people recognized that as a defining trait. And once a captive bred line has been, there are situations where you can use it as a proxy for inbreeding. So if it should be a longer snout, given the wild phenotype, but then the captive bred animals you're starting to see like basically nothing here, and it's like a flat nose and a very different shape on their head and things like that. Doesn't look like the wild type anymore. That can be a function of inbreeding, right? Like a function of captive breeding that's going in a direction that's very different from the wild. And it's not something you can generalize about. It's not something you can say, oh, because I see that, it definitely is inbred. But it is a potential outcome for sure. Yeah. So that's a good question, because it's like it's not that you can't use it really as a proxy for much, but it's one piece of information for sure.
What's going on in the community as far as receiving this information, and what kind of reactions, and by reactions I mean actions, are people taking?
Well, I can tell you, I shared it with a bunch of people before I published, and some people were like, "Don't do it," and then other people were like, I asked Brian Stewart. I said, "Hey, Brian Stewart, what do you think of this?" And I said, "Punch me in the face if I deserve it." And then he said he liked it, and I think that there's been other people who have read it and said, "Wow, I learned something new, and I'm going to try to keep my projects distinct," where they have wild caught and wild type Ambanja project, and then they have their captive bred Ambanja lines that they think are gorgeous and they're going to continue to work with, but they're just going to keep those things separate. And I think that was a pretty cool outcome, is to see some people make that decision.
I think that's a great outcome.
Yeah.
So we got a good question for you, Jon.
Yeah, that's funny. I just finished editing an episode for this. I had just had a conversation with Ben Morrill, Dr. Ben Morrill, and we're going to release that. Bill could probably tell you more about the timeline on the release, but it's
you're negotiating that.
Yeah, we're negotiating that, but it's ready to go.
We have the audio. Now we just
we've got
to have the garnishes.
We need to garnish it. We need to do some photos and some of the last steps, but it's the interview is done. And what we're doing right now is collecting a list of people who want to submit for the last round of development on the test before it becomes a public offering from Rare Genetics Inc. So anybody who hasn't seen that yet, run over to iPardalis.com/FAQ and submit a form with your locale information, your contact information. And what Dr. Ben Morrill is going to do is he's going to take that list, and he's going to get a good stratified sample of local forms for the final round of testing that he will do for free. And then he'll be releasing the first version of the test over the next couple months. So,
yeah. Hey, Jonathan, we're There's a number of panther chameleons in the chat that are getting their feelings hurt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are there some trash heap ambelobe in there?
Here you see my trash panther antelope.
There we go, with a flatter nose. Oh no. Yeah, this is great. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to insult him. He's probably gorgeous.
Positive affirmations. You're okay.
Yeah.
You're beautiful. We love you anyways.
Yeah, he probably eats well and he's lots of fun, so no big deal. I mean, it's an amazing species. I don't think I've ever seen a panther where I have not wanted to spend time with it, interact with it, understand it. That's the thing that makes it fun. When we get into genetics and we get into local forms and the technical stuff, the details, that's just getting in a little bit deeper. It's not like anything else is less valuable, right? I know, like, the first experience anybody has with a chameleon is going to be something they remember for the rest of their life, at least if they're anything like us. Like, I remember I went into an exotic pet shop, Doolittle's, when I was like 6 years old, and it was in Irondequoit, New York. And I just sat watching this veiled chameleon walking around in its enclosure for an hour. My mom let me just sit there watch it because she knew I wasn't going to go anywhere. I didn't get it, didn't bring it home, but I absolutely loved watching it. And I don't know, I think a lot of people have that type of experience the first time they see him. They're so fascinating. So that it's just the first step, in my opinion.
I think this is true. Hawaiian Jack.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, there may be some
spiraling out of
there.
control.
I only deal with true Kenyan Jacksons.
Kenyan, yeah.
I don't get real bloodlines. I won't take it. One of those I know that might be from Hawaii or something like that. But that's only because I listened to Bill's podcast before I went out and got some, and I got many of them from Bill himself. So whether he was telling me the truth or not, who knows? But
who knows?
Yeah. But I mean, I see a lot of parallels there, though, honestly, because one is more like the thing we see in the wild, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing is the thing that's in captivity for a long time. And as people who are really passionate about the species and passionate about the wild animals that we love, we want to emulate that in captivity. We want to recreate it. And so part of it, at least for me, is it's like, this local form is really cool. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going in captivity the same way it is in the wild. And at least that's part of it for me. And I think it's probably similar to people who are really into the Kenyans versus the Hawaiians, is just knowing that they're the ones that we want to emulate, right? So it's, at least, I don't know if you guys, what do you guys think about that? Is it a similar tendency, or is
I think it's similar?
And I mean, or is it just panther breeders being snobs, right?
Well, the only difference is that the Kenyan Jacksons, there is a difference that you can see. It's a desirable difference with the horns and the body size. With the Ambanjas, you have the challenge that the captive
is attractive in some way.
Is very attractive, and in some cases considered more attractive. And so you can't make the same argument. The same argument is not going to land as well as effectively with the panther chameleon situation.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. There's a good number of them that are really ugly. And I said this before on my podcast.
I will agree with that.
But it's like, some of them, when you look at them, you're like, that screams across. It's not even a question as to whether or not it is, because it drifts so far in one direction. Like, it looks like it nosy bee on the back half, and then the front half looks like a red body blue bar ambelobe. And then you're like, what's going on with that animal?
Yeah, but the ones that look great look so great that
Yeah.
people are blinded to everything else that happens. I didn't
True.
have that problem with the Jackson's chameleon because
Yeah.
the Hawaiians that look really good, they just look as good as the Kenyans. So there wasn't like the wild, okay, now I'm a
It's
rainbow
not like
jack.
you could hit the lottery with the
Yeah. Yeah, there was
Hawaiians,
no
right?
lottery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
you
just can never unsee that one outcome, which is like
oh,
my worst nightmare. My worst nightmare. So
I've seen
I would
things
never
that are
touch
just
that.
ugly. And it's like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's just you can see all the parts, and it's just not right.
All right. So we're getting into the negative part of all this stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
That's
well,
my
let's
fault.
pull ourselves out. Nate has a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I'm going to let Jonathan
I
do
don't
that
know.
because I'm tired of
Yeah.
talking about that.
Has anybody heard the conversations with I think it's dragoon geckos on Animals at Home Network?
Don't think so.
No. I
If
like to watch Animals at Home, but they have so many podcasts I don't have.
Yeah, but this was with Dylan, and I'm blanking on the name of the woman who owns the company.
I can
She's
find it.
she is so smart. She knows her stuff. And she's done now 2 of these really long conversations about how to line breed while maintaining a healthy breeding stock and pursuing a goal with her leopard gecko projects. And she's done now, I want to say, about 3 hours of interviews on there that are some of the best I've heard. So I definitely recommend that if it's a topic you want to hear more about. The difference between line breeding and inbreeding is like is semantic in some way. It's like, so the inbreeding is in my opinion, it's, you know it when you see it. It's like something that would be illegal in all 50 states type of a thing. And then line breeding is just outside of that. It's right like at the edges of what's legal. And then working towards a goal, which is to reproduce a founding animal or to move the entire project in a certain direction, often by recombining animals from one founding line. So you have like one animal that you've run. Oh yeah, dragoon geckos is correct. Yeah, that's the breeder. But when you're line breeding, you are purposely taking that one line, splitting it, and recombining it without really intending to add new things. Your goal is to keep it going, and to keep it pure to the line. And so, I think that the difference between line breeding and inbreeding is it's like if it's going to be kind of semantic in that, like, some people would say, oh, cousins is inbreeding, or second cousins is inbreeding, or third cousins is inbreeding. But there you very quickly reach a constraint in the captive population, which would mean that everything captive bred is inbred because everything's related at some point. So you dig back far enough, which I do. I dig back way too far, to the point where it like makes people upset. And I always find the common relative, right? And I report it. And I wouldn't say that that's inbreeding to know that there is a common relative somewhere. But I think that when you take that and you say, oh, I got that common relative, and you purposely go and say, oh, I've got this other animal with a common relative, and I'm going to put them together, that's when you start getting into line breeding, because you're saying that's the line I like. I want to put those together and get more of it. And so that's, at least for me, when I think about it as line breeding, when people are purposely taking animals from a given founder, like founding animal, and pairing them up at some point down the future, hoping to reproduce it. Whereas with inbreeding, it is usually more closely related type combinations, but it's tough. Yeah, I don't think there's an objective line between the two, where you could say like at this point it is now just line breeding and not inbreeding. Like, I don't know. You can use it as a slur for people.
Yeah, it's Rebecca Hassler.
Rebecca Hassler is her name.
Yeah.
What was that last question there? Evolution being able to calculate genetic drift through population. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's everything is related. If you really want to get technical about it, like we're related to bananas, right? I don't think that really matters.
Monkeys like bananas, and okay, I get it.
Yeah. I'm related to monkeys. I don't know what you're related to.
Oh, you go, just keep going back, you know.
Oh, that's right. We're talking about Jonathan Hill, who just won't stop going back.
Yeah, just keep digging. You'll find it. But yeah, in all seriousness, I think that's a great question. I think that usually a responsible thing to do is to think about when is there going to be a detrimental impact and try to avoid that. And in the Dragoon Gecko's interview, she talks about it. It's like, hey, and what happens if you do see a adverse outcome? What do you do? Right? Well, you don't breed it. You definitely don't breed it. If you see an adverse outcome that you didn't want to see in your breeding project, whether you're line breeding or not line breeding, you stop there. You just let it die. And that's, I think, a difficult thing for people to do for some reason, is to just let it go. There's no fixing it. There's no like, oh, maybe the next gen it's going to be okay. No, stop breeding it. So I think that was a really good point that she raised in that interview, is just, you're not just breeding for color. You're not just breeding for phenotype. You're breeding for healthy and strong animals with properly shaped rostral appendages. And yeah, I know. Sorry, guys.
So Animalistic, although she was late to the show today, she has we're going to make this the last comment of the night. Her cham is Tracy, and she's a banana. But, we've approached the 50-something hour or minutes, and I think we'll try to end on that thought. So we'll have to think about it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Yeah,
Jonathan, you just come on here and you just
Jonathan, it's all in good fun. We love having you on there. We know you're very intelligent and above us on all these genetic things. And so,
Annabelle, you're a great banana.
All right.
That's banana.
All right. So I'm going to say goodnight because this is going way too off the rails. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being here, so many people. And we enjoyed being here. We'll see you next week.
All right.